Hello my friends, this day is so rich with those awesome news happening, also kabooms coming from Crimea. Yeah, this is the image from the Ukrainian drone camera, so bear with me because this video is going to be longer than usual. We have lots of the things to discuss, but at first let's start from the Kacha airfield of the Russian army in Crimea, where it was already the third strike of the Ukrainian primary drone. They kaputted some of the radars and the airplanes on the parking spots. This is Antonov 26, the Russian cargo transport airplane. By the way, I used to fly that one at the beginning of my pilot career for commercial aviation. Yeah, we transported some of the cargo between Turkey and Greece. Also, we had some flights in Ukraine, so I know this airplane pretty much well. And there is no alternate for this one in the Russian army. So immediately we're starting from this image, Crimea, yeah, Crimea. I know this area very freaking well because I spent my childhood out there during the summer time. So here the drone approaches towards the settlement from western side and goes in direction towards the military airfield. Here is some sort of the radar. One more. Here the drone made a U-turn and hit this radar, which was, I think, working by the time. And next we have Antonov 26 airplane. Well, this one was on maintenance. You can see Antonov 26 with the number 30. Well, here's the same airplane with the number 30 and Dolphin in the front. So it was flying, it was just put on overhaul maintenance. And then I was a kid, this airplane was flying. Yes, it is that old, so I know this vehicle personally. I want to tell you more that I even went inside of this airplane once because there was the air show, some of the aviation exhibition, there were lots of the kids, parents and so on. It was a very, very long time ago. I think I was 14 or 15 years old by the time. Yeah, this airplane is that old. Aircraft were put on apron for exhibition. It was the Open Navy Aviation Day. And I remember this one with the Dolphin, and there is also a flight simulator model with this particular airplane out there. But now it's been kaputted because Russia started the war in Ukraine. It's not because Ukraine really wanted to kaput those, but Ukraine is forced to reply, you know, because those airplanes that deliver deadly cargo very close to the front lines, or they are used in Russian logistics to maintain their air bases. Now let's go back to the screenshot. So there are some ladders I can see over there. So it was definitely a maintenance here, open air. Yeah, one of the ladders. Propellers are absent, but engines are still out there. They're not removed, but landing gear is. The aircraft just lifted up on those stands. Here we go. Boom. Yeah, definitely it was the strike very close to the fuel tanks. And there is the residual fuel left in the tanks, in the fuel system. So of course it caused the kaboom of this airplane. There is, yeah, we see this kaboom, it's on fire. That's the end of the Dolphin airplane, and here's some sort of the vehicle nearby. Does it look like a fire truck or some other vehicle? Hard to say. And one more airplane. Well, this one, I guess, was flying. First of all, the parking spot is not a remote one, that's the usual stand there, and it has the tow bar attached, so they push it and pull it out from this parking. Yeah, I'm gonna put my image back up. So all of the engines and propellers are out there. I think that after all, this airplane was also hit, well, this time in the tail part could be. And again, we have the confirmation of fire. And here you can see B-12 airplane still alive, but it looks like Ukraine is really interested in kaputting those airplanes as well. And I think it's just a matter of time for Kacha to stay without any sort of the air vehicles. It seems like Russia is not defending this airfield at all, because after all, it's the secondary military base for Russia. Well, there are no any fighter jets, no any strategic bombers, and Russia has the limited amount of the air defense system, so they cannot deploy those elsewhere. So they prioritize some of the sensitive targets. Helicopters, transport airplanes, B-12, they weight less compared to, for example, strategic bombers, right? Or sophisticated fighter jets, which are placed not far away actually from Kacha in Belbek. It's roughly 15 kilometers away from Kacha. Okay, so this is BE-12 that is still alive, and here I can see helicopter, but it is without rotor blades. Also could be on the maintenance, or Russia cannibalize it for the spare parts. Our analytics already geolocated the parking spots and everything. Definitely it's Kacha. It was vivid for me, yeah, 100%. But here are some of the screenshots from the satellite images and real picture. By the way, here this radar that I showed you before, it was not actually in Kacha, it was in Tarhankut. So we have new geolocation image. It was just put in this compilation of the videos. I thought it's Mayak because it has the same construction as shown here in Kacha. And why this ancient airplane is so important for the Russian army? Well, simply, there is no alternate. Well, Russians actually tried to come out with something new, for example, Ilyushin 112V airplane, but in 2020, I guess, this airplane crashed. Developers found some sort of the flaws in construction, and Russia cannot replace some of the spare parts which were delivered by the Western producers before. And now Russia needs to refurbish the entire design of this airplane to get used to some of the Asian-made parts from China or the own Russian-made. But Russians cannot replace lots of the stuff, and those are the remains of Ilyushin 112V. By the way, here we have the video of it, how it crashed. There was the fire.
Mom, вон.
Yeah, I'll reduce the audio or cancel it. Basically, there was the fire and the plane lost control and kaboomed. It happened, I guess, in 2020 again. Even in description we have it's the first military transport airplane developed by Russia from the scratch since the Soviet Union collapsed. Yeah, and you see how they develop it. So Russia has to rely on Antonov 26 made decades and decades ago. An ancient airplane, but still flies if it is maintained. Just to remind you where the Kacha airfield is, so this is Sevastopol, here we have Belbek, the base for the Russian fighter jets, and here's Kacha, helicopters, cargo airplanes, and BE-12 surveillance. So here's the parking spot. One more on the right here, eastern parking spot. There is also the northern one and the place for helicopters. Well, if you speak about the space, square kilometers, square miles, this base is really big. It's actually bigger than Belbek, but Belbek is, I would say, more important after all. And there are multiple of the other bases in Crimea, including the main Russian base of Navy fleet in Sevastopol. However, Russia was forced to move their ships where to Novorossiysk and even to Tuapse, but mostly to Novorossiysk. But even there Ukraine is capable to reach Russian ships, as it was yesterday, yeah, with the Ukrainian drone attack. Not just the aerial drones were used, but also the drone boats. From what I understood, there were a couple of the Magura boats, but it's not over for Russians. Ukraine will continue to push with those drones, and Russia has nowhere to run any longer. Their ships, their logistics, their airfields are under the threat in entire region of the Black Sea. Maybe Russians should consider to ask Turkey to open straits for their military to run away from this place. Yeah, it's a joke, but after all, there is definitely a threat for the Russian ships, let's be honest. Wow guys, we have so many news. I'm gonna put the time codes just below for you to switch. I forgot to tell it in the beginning, but the time codes are over there to check out every sort of the topic. But of course, for me, it is better that you watch this video entirely. Yeah, obviously. Anyways, let's continue. We have more kabooms happening. For example, Ukraine hit this critical gas pumping station. The strike was conducted by 14th UAV Regiment of Ukrainian Army. Fantastic. There were several of the kabooms, as you see. The gas distribution station was hit in occupied Luhansk overnight. This is the main supplier for Luhansk thermal power plant, and this power plant is forced to switch for coal supply. So Ukraine hits enemy captured territories as well, because Russia continued to target Ukrainian infrastructure. Here we have one more image. Oh yeah, here's this facility. It's just the huge fire blast out there. Yeah, then the gas burns. It's very critical. Here's one more kaboom. I guess from this distance it's visible, and here is one more. Yeah, the fire is absolutely huge. It broke out from those pipes from what we see, so Russia has to use their resources to repair this facility, but can they do it? Because the winter is kind of close. The Russian gas distribution facility was located roughly 90 kilometers away from the front lines, unreachable with the classical Gimler's missiles for HIMARS. So for sure it was the strike of the 14th Ukrainian Drone Regiment. Very successful. Luhansk and Donetsk are the main supply hubs for the Russian army in entire eastern front lines. And they used civilians who still live there as the human shields. Yeah, many people left those regions because the economy there is absolutely broken. Those regions are pretty much dystopian, militarized. So we're not speaking about millions and millions of people as it was before 2014. And now Ukraine cuts the energy supplies, first of all for the Russian logistics. And you probably know about the water crisis in Donetsk city and Donetsk region. Well, Russia claims that Ukraine cut the water supplies, which is actually a bullshit. Actually, Ukraine was supplying the water to Donetsk even after 2014. Yes, then Donetsk was occupied. So what did happen to that water then? Well, Russia destroyed all of the enterprises, all of the logistics and the pumping stations which were used to deliver water to Donetsk. They did it themselves with the aviation gliding bombs. The fresh water was coming from the river of Donetsk, one of the biggest rivers out there in Donetsk Oblast. Yeah, it is no more. Well guys, we have some positive aviation news. Russia lost Sukhoi 34 fighter bomber. It happened early morning or nighttime, you may call it 4 a.m. Su-34 was going to bomb Ukrainian positions in the south but was intercepted by air defense missile. Could be from Patriot system, could be air-to-air missile. At first this information was shared by Ukrainian Air Force Command, but later on it was confirmed by Russians themselves. Their military blogger on Telegram fighter bomber posted this photo saying, "Oh, yeah, it is very sad, blah blah blah." Well, what is sad for them is cheerful for us. By the way, pilots were flatlined as well. There are 2 pilots in the cockpit of this plane. What I may say, well, pretty much deserved, because they continue to bomb Ukrainian, even civilian infrastructure and military as well. It seems like one of the pilots' name was Zheka, za Zheku, so for Zheka we're gonna revenge or something. You'll be washed with blood, bitches. Oh my god. Well, more to come, Russian pilots. After all, you came to Ukraine with war and you have what you deserve. You all, finally, in one or other way, gonna be flatlined. And here's an example why Ukraine should kaput those airplanes, especially Sukhoi 34, because they drop aviation gliding bombs on Ukrainian positions. This was in Kherson region. Also one more, some of the industrial place out there, and you see the strike was coordinated with drones. They usually operate during the night time. Here we see the thermal camera, night vision, and here is the usual camera. And it could be even a Kherson city, so Russians continue to bomb Ukrainian cities and sometimes they have revenge. Yeah, occasionally, but it happens, Russia loses their airplanes. Plus we have this image from the Russian channel, so there is the strike on Gavrilovka village. This is Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. 3 of the bombs hit some of the structures here and the 4th one went to the field. The accuracy is 75%. What was inside? Hard to tell. And this is the different angle 1, 2, 3 and 4. The fact that Russians were flying really far away using 2 of the surveillance drones, well, it's kind of concerning. Ukraine does everything to shut down those Russian drones with the help of our volunteers. It is possible, but simply Ukraine needs more drones and more drone operators, not just on the front lines but in civilian cities, unfortunately, because this was flying to target a Ukrainian city. Plus, Russians published this video not far away from Svetlohirsk village, Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. They claim that this is the radar of the Patriot system. Here you see, yeah, the position of air defense system Patriot. Well, for me it's definitely hard to tell what is there. You can see also some sort of the vehicle or equipment masked nearby. Yeah, I'm gonna move my image to the right because here is the position, and Russians used the Iskander ballistic missile to hit it with a shrapnel. You will see just right now. You see, yeah, cluster munition. It really covers the huge area, so the standard shells could be not so precise as the cluster munition. And later on we see some of the fire there. And here I see one more object, probably a vehicle that arrived for evacuation. That gives us a hint that definitely it could be the part of the real equipment. But still, I'm not sure whether it's definitely a Patriot system radar, and you see something else is hidden in the bushes. The strange thing is for me that this system was deployed open field, and where are the Patriot launchers if we have the radar here? Where are they? So the chances for it to be some sort of the decoy are also high. I tried to find out the village Svitlogirska in Dnipropetrovsk region where Russia claimed they hit this Patriot radar. Well, the only option we have is this one. This is the village of Svitlogirska. And it is not that far away from the Dnipro city itself. Yeah, of course, it is within the range of the Russian Iskanders, but what is concerning that Russians could fly their drones at this distance. But again, it's hard to tell about real geolocation. We should wait for independent analysis and geolocation. But yeah, it could be even Svitlogirsk because recently Russians hit one of the airfields of Kamenka in Dnipro itself. Here in the northern part there is the air club Kamenka. I was there once, nice airfield, but Russians hit it already for the second time. Yeah, sorry guys for showing you that as well, but we have to speak about it because this problem exists. Ukraine is in lack of the air defense capabilities to fight against those Russian drones, which are used for surveillance to track Russian Iskanders or the drops of the Russian gliding bombs. Yeah, this is the same air club that I showed you before. Russians say that it was the military base of Ukraine for drones and Yakovlev 52, which fly and fight against the Russian drones. And yeah, this fighter jet is memorial. It's not used by Ukraine. It's kind of the old one, maybe MiG-17 or something. And here Russians, they hit the hangars. Yeah, the fire spread around. It was the cluster munition Iskander ballistic missile. Alright, again we have some of the images of the Russian fighter jets flying over the Baltic Sea. 3 of the MiG-31s and 1 Sukhoi Su-30 was also spotted there. This image also was taken from, I think, Romanian fighter jets, which were flying over the Baltic. So you may see that it looks like there are no missiles, but we have a different image here. So after all, there were 2 of the missiles, air-to-air missiles, but no bomb load here. As well as on MiG-31 we may see the same missile. Well, this time the Russian jets didn't penetrate the airspace of NATO, but they were very close, and they fly there almost every day. And remember the case with the violation of the Estonian airspace, the Russian fighter jets were flying there for 12 minutes. It's very long. Well, Bloomberg published some of the insights about this case today in the article. Journalists say that at a meeting in Moscow, a Russian diplomat told European envoys that incursion of the Russian aircraft into Estonian airspace were allegedly a response to Ukrainian attacks on Crimea. I am just kind of confused. What Ukraine has to do with that? It is kind of nonsense because Ukraine continued to strike Crimea since 2022. Targeting the main Russian Navy base in Sevastopol, also Saki airfield, you might remember that it was almost completely demolished. Kerch Bridge few of the times, and now Russia says that we violate your airspace because Ukraine attacks Crimea. Ukraine is doing it for years and years. So this excuse, it simply doesn't work. First of all, because violation of the NATO airspace and Ukrainian actions, they're different by nature. And secondary, it hasn't been started just yesterday when Ukraine launched attacks on Crimea, as I told you. Crazy. Russians tell that just to justify their own violation of the airspace of NATO, and they'll continue to escalate. For example, again, the Aalborg airport is closed, the one that was closed yesterday, and it's the 3rd day consecutive that there are some of the drones flying over Denmark, some even over the military bases, and I wonder why Denmark is not shutting those drones down, because they are visible on many of the videos. I think that they should shut them down, otherwise they show weakness. Coincidentally, at the same time, there is a big Russian landing ship located in the neutral waters not far away from Denmark. Denmark launched those aero patrols to find out what is happening on board. By the way, Ukraine kaputted several of those. A Denmark Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen says that we are in the situation of the hybrid war. Wow, what a surprise, definitely. She says we experience cyber attacks, airspace violations and sabotage operations not just in Denmark but in many of the NATO countries. And she also thinks it's just a beginning. Meanwhile, NATO diplomats already officially warned Russia that they will shut down everything that enters the airspace of NATO. Well, I hope that finally NATO will show its strengths, not the weakness, because some of the countries already stated that they will shut down Russian drones or Russian jets if there is imminent threat. Is it really an invitation to fly for Russians in their airspace? So we have two of those contradicting statements from NATO and from countries' officials, some of the countries. For example, Romanian Minister of Defense says that they will shut down unidentified aircraft in their airspace only if other measures to cause the aircraft to leave the airspace of the country do not work. Good luck. Yesterday there were some movements in Alaska. Allegedly, American jets intercepted Russian airplanes, which were flying over the neutral waters. Americans even used AVAX airplane. Now I would say in general the surveillance operations of NATO forces, they boosted up recently. For example, today American surveillance airplanes were patrolling Estonia, Lithuania airspace for extended period of time. There was the Boeing P-8A Poseidon and also the big surveillance airplane RC-135V River Joint. Turkey also sent its surveillance Boeing airplane to the base in Lithuania. Here's the landing, which was spotted today in Vilnius airport. Oh, here it's kind of interesting. The Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has ordered a rare urgent gathering of the nearly all generals and admirals in the United States Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, Navy and Space Force next week at Marine Corps Base Quantico in Virginia for currently unknown reason, according to the Washington Post. Wow, this is interesting. But again, he is not the Secretary of Defense, he is the Secretary of War. Well, the gathering is definitely outstanding. We'll see what they might talk about. I hope some of the information will go to the press despite some of the restrictions applied on press by Pentagon itself just 1 week ago. And yes, the North American Aerospace Defense Command NOMAD has confirmed that several military aircraft with the Russian Airspace Forces, 2 Tupolev 95 strategic bombers and 2 Sukhoi 35 SM Flanker M violated the Alaskan Air Defense Identification Zone ADIZ. It happened the last night, resulting in scrambling of E-3C Sentry airborne early warning and control aircraft F-16s. And 4 of the stratotankers for refueling purposes. Plus, the Russian Barei-class nuclear ballistic missile submarine was spotted near Japan. This marks the first time such vessels have been spotted to Japan's shores. Japanese self-defense forces, well, interesting name, were deployed to patrol the boat. I understand why it's that name, but it sounds kind of interesting. Aircraft were also sent, and there was also missile cruiser spotted together with the Russian submarine. It means that Russia escalates absolutely everywhere against NATO, against Western countries and their allies, like for example Japan. So my personal opinion, my friends, if you want to know it, that the war in Europe, a big one, is almost imminent. The Mad Vlad is absolutely crazy, he might do the step, and Russians are okay with it. They're okay with everything. And we see how escalation goes up, yeah? One drone, some of the drones, jets, more drones, military drills. Yeah. By the way, today the Polish embassy in Minsk has urged its citizens to leave Belarus and recommended refraining from any travel to the country of Belarus. Well, just a couple of days ago, Poland reopened the border with Belarus that was closed by the time there were military drills on territory of the neighboring country. So China may again send their products to Europe using that border. A Belarus potato dictator Lukashenko said that Oreshnik missile is on the way to be deployed in Belarus and is going to be very soon. Russia agreed on it and already sends the equipment to maintain it. Well, one more escalation. Alright, some political news. I will not speak a lot about Trump today, but here's his reaction on Russians' action in war.
They have put it all out on the line. Their economy is going to hell. They're bombing the hell out of everything, and they're picking up a very little territory, if any. In fact, they're losing some territory. So I think it's been very bad for the reputation of Russia. This war should have been over. If this were our war, we would have had it over in 1 week.
The last sentence was kind of interesting. If it was our war. So if United States of America had started the aggression against Ukraine, they would have finished it in 1 week. Russia said about 3 days. 1 week, Trump says, okay, why not 2 weeks, Donald Trump, come on. And the change in the Trump's rhetorics doesn't necessarily mean the change of the United States policy towards Ukraine. And the main media outlets, they actually agree on that. For example, Reuters comments that with this harsh rhetoric towards Russia, Donald Trump hides the abandoning of Ukraine. The Telegraph says that its 180-degree turnaround may not be a good sign for Zelensky. After all, the Wall Street Journal says that this rhetoric change doesn't mean anything. Financial Times, Trump just wants to put responsibility for European allies fully. New York Post, the change in the Trump's word doesn't mean the change in the policy. NBC News, there are no any change in the White House policy, and Ukraine plus European Union do not expect that change. Donald Tusk, a Prime Minister of Poland, behind this unexpected optimism lies assertion of reduced United States involvement and shifting the responsibility for ending the war into Europe. So you see, yeah, the rhetoric is good, but in general, the actions are the same and no one expects some changes. Moreover, this new Trump's rhetoric could be even a challenge for Putin. Oh, you call us a paper tiger, unable to achieve results? Well, we're gonna escalate. And not in Ukraine, because in Ukraine Russia is useless, but they may try to escalate against NATO countries, and in that case United States would look like a paper tiger together with NATO itself if they wouldn't react promptly, and probably they would not. So those harsh statements towards Russia should go in parallel with intensification of the Ukrainian army support. Blah 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 only will not resolve this war. And it shows that Donald Trump absolutely doesn't have any sort of the plan. He is on the waves, up and down, software change, pro-Russian, pro-Ukrainian, pro-whatsoever. He doesn't have any sort of the values to stick with them and continue till the end, like it was with the previous White House administration, for example. Yeah, some people say dementia, old guy, Joe Biden, but Ukraine got way more military support, and Joe Biden was kind of the good player in geopolitics. Yeah, he was there for decades. He knew the topic very, very well. But the property realtor Donald Trump with narcissistic mindset, he simply cannot compete with the current threats coming from Russia, China, and all of this dictatorship bloc. I'm telling you guys like that because it's the real thing. Russian refinery. Hello! Yeah, again, Afimsky refinery, the biggest one in Russia. This is Krasnodarsky Krai, Russian Federation. The initial processing distillation plant was hit by Ukrainian drones, or it could be a missile. Well, just 10 days ago this refinery was hit by the drones, Russians tried to repair it, and now it hit once again. Every night Ukraine launches some of the drones towards Russia, and in most of the cases it is Russian refinery. Afimsky refinery is, I would say, crucial. It's very important, especially for the European region of Russia and for Caucasus as well. Also, it is used to provide the fuel for occupied territories of Ukraine, including Crimea, where the fuel crisis is, I would say, the most critical. It's been a while since we spoke about the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. Well, for the second day consecutive there is blackout on the station. Only the emergency diesel generators are supplying reactors. This situation is out of hand, guys. Absolutely. This is the biggest nuclear power plant, guys, in Europe, in Eastern Europe at least. And Russians absolutely neglect everything out there. They put even their military on territory of the station and inside reactor buildings. Yeah, what should we expect from Russia? They even dig down the trenches in the red forest of Chernobyl. Zelensky also mentioned the situation with Zaporizhia NPP, but no one really cares from the international community. No any real actions done to press Russia to act differently out there. Alright guys, now let's go to the Frontline update. We have some of the positive news coming from the Sumy region. Let's zoom into the place Oleksiivka. There Ukraine is attacking Russian positions, and Russians were forced even to leave this village. Just occasionally some of the Russian soldiers are still mad there, but mainly this village is under Ukrainian control already. The actual situation there is like that. So Oleksiivka is partially been taken or liberated, it's better to say, by Ukraine, and the part of it is still in a gray zone. But the main forces of Russia are retreating back to Vladimirovka and Novomykolaivka. By the way, the fights are ongoing there as well. So Russia is even in a worse condition in Sumy than it is in the northern part of the Kharkiv region, where Russians tried to advance to Kharkiv but were stopped by Ukrainian defenders long time ago. In Sumy region, Russians are forced even to retreat, little by little. Russians were just dreaming to get Sumy and Kharkiv cities under their control, because they're very close to the Russian border. But after more than 3.5 years of this war, they are unable to do it. There were attempts, but Russian army failed, and they failed even in 2022. They thought, oh, Sumy, we're gonna take it later, let's go further with the main force. And they actually tried to enter the city, but there was the resistance, mostly from local defenders. The same was in Kharkiv. In Kharkiv, Russia sent more reinforcements, but they were unable to get even to the city center. So Donald Trump with his rhetorics is actually correct. We just need to get more actions from the United States, yeah? In the Pokrovsk direction, no changes for today. There are also no changes in Konstantinovka. But Russians continue to attack in Dnipropetrovsk region. For example, there was the movement in Berezovo village, so it was yesterday and is today. So almost every day they move, and they have pretty much good chances to advance even further if they concentrate enough reinforcements. But mainly they concentrate those over here. They are preparing for one more jump to break Ukrainian defense line in Donbass. Well, I think it's too late for them already. The weather is getting nastier and nastier. After all, it's autumn time, and Russians, I don't think they will be successful with this kind of the operation. Oh, here's one more update. Russians expanded their gains in Serbiansky forest yesterday, today. So just the gray area is colored now with red. And with that, plus with those attack vectors from the north, they create the threat for Milan. Milan city? Oh my god. Those northern attacks, they create the threat for Liman town, the town from which Russia was kicked already back in 2022. As well as they were kicked from Kupiansk, Kharkiv Oblast, but there were no changes, no updates there for the last couple of days. And here, guys, I want to tell my separate thanks to Patreon supporters and also members of YouTube channel. You are making my content possible. You motivate me to film more. You are making this my full-time job. Without you, I wouldn't be possible. Guys, if you want to support my channel, the link for my Patreon is just in the video description below. Thank you so much. And I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.